Let's bring in tonight's panel to get through the stories of the day. Sky News political reporter Cam Redden and Daily Telegraph journalist James Willis. Gents, welcome. So as we just saw, the Prime Minister pledged today to cut medicines on the PBS to just $25 as part of next week's budget. Now, I've been saying they'll try to go hard on the cost of living. It seems like they're starting to ramp that up with this budget. It's the only reason they've got it there. It'll cost $689 million over the forward estimates, but I suppose it's hard to argue against medicines being cheaper. There is one mob that doesn't seem to like it, though. The Pharmaceutical Research and Manufacturers of America, they're a lobby group. They've written to the US Trade Representative Jameson Greer complaining that the scheme is an egregious and discriminatory pricing practice and should form part of President Trump's widening trade war. Cam, it's an interesting take.
Yeah, what a surprise, Caleb. Big pharmaceutical companies not liking cheaper medicines in Australia. Of course, this does have a significance because on April 2, just a couple of weeks away, most likely in an election campaign, that's when the Trump administration will be rolling out its next round of tariffs. The indication today, after the wake of all of this, another round of lobbying by the big pharmaceutical companies in the US overnight, it seems unlikely that Australia would get any carve-out if there are to be sweeping tariffs on pharmaceuticals generally. Of course, these pharmaceutical companies, they don't just not like the PBS. There are other schemes that are somewhat comparable in other countries, so we wouldn't be the only one hit. I do think, Caleb, we saw some of the strongest language today from the Prime Minister pushing back against these tariffs from the US. We know about all the chatter that's going on behind the scenes. The Trade Minister spoke again with Jameson Greer yesterday, but the Prime Minister about as firm as he's been today, saying we're going to stand our ground on this. The PBS is not a bargaining tool. There's no negotiation here. It's a tough stance that might, unfortunately for Australia, though, mean we won't be able to get out of these tariffs if they are imposed. But I suppose for the Prime Minister, Caleb, he'd be looking at this and thinking, well, you've got to draw a line somewhere. It might as well be on things like medicine and pharmaceuticals.
And fair enough. I mean, of course, what Trump is trying to do is America first. That's what he was elected to do. You'd like to think that any leader of this country would be Australia first. It's pretty straightforward stuff. But of course, James, this is another expense on the federal budget. Economist Warren Hogan was on with Shari last night. He was saying that the government's economic strategy was dangerous. Take a look.
This is a massive spending government. The size of government in this country is like nothing we've seen before. I think this is a dangerous economic strategy. And of course, the other thing is it is inflationary. No matter what a lot of people, including the government, want to say, rising government spending is going to put upward pressure on inflation. And that has not disappeared in this country. And my concern is if we suddenly decide, OK, well, we can run debt the size of America or the UK or Europe, then we're going to have some consequences for the households who've got all these mortgages, i.e. higher rates or access to credit.
And the inconvenient truth, James, is that even if you think it is a noble thing to make medicines cheaper, what he says about increased government spending leading to more inflation is correct.
Yeah, that's right, Caleb. There's no such thing as a free lunch. And in fairness, I think Labor and the Prime Minister, if you were to give them one of their, big ticks in this term of government, you'd say that they have reduced the price of medicine, and they did stare down Big Pharma when it warned about mass closures of chemists and pharmacy issues, and they have given Australians cheaper medicines. However, as Warren Hogan has said there, as a number of economists have said, there is a wider issue here, and I think we're crying out on both sides of politics for a treasurer or a shadow treasurer that starts to show some fiscal restraint and talks about some real economic reform. I think it's been lacking in Australian politics for the last few years. Before the last election, Jim Chalmers went on the ABC and said that the Labor would not be squirting billions of dollars around like the coalition has done. That is exactly what Jim Chalmers and Labor have done in the last few years. The spending is out of control. We've got big government. We've got jobs that are attached to the NDIS in big numbers, or public service jobs. And at the same time, we're heading towards $1 trillion worth of debt. Check your next tax return. Have a look at how much interest we're paying. You and I are paying on that debt, and it just keeps going and going and going. And as Warren Hogan has said, and others, that it is going to ultimately have pressure on inflation, and the households are still going to be doing their heavy lifting. So it's a concern, and I've been largely uninspired by both sides in terms of what they're doing regarding fiscal restraint, aside from Peter Dutton saying there'll be cuts to the public service and other wasteful spending in government.
Yeah, well, the problem, of course, is once you give something to someone, it's very hard to take it back. That's always what happens when government spends money.